My sister enables her kids' criminal behavior, and now they're ruining the neighborhood. When I came home from work, I noticed my shed door was open, and the padlock I used to keep it shut was broken. I had bags full of soda cans in there, as I tend to drink a lot of soda. I had built up a lot of cans and was going to cash them in at the bottle drop soon. More than just my cans were missing from the shed. Some gardening tools, a machete, and a gas can were also gone. I checked my security cameras and saw my 3 nephews breaking into my shed early in the morning, using a hammer to smash the lock and taking the cans and other stuff. I confronted my sister and her husband with the footage, and they were furious with their kids for robbing me and skipping school to do it. I got the other stuff back, but the gas can was emptied, and they had already cashed in all the cans. I demanded over $200 from my sister for the cans and the broken padlock. They initially got angry at their kids, then made excuses, and finally got mad at me for wanting the money back. I gave them an ultimatum to pay me back or face charges. When they refused, I went to the police and filed a report, providing evidence of the theft. My nephews were arrested for trespassing, larceny, vandalism, and harassment. They were caught on camera stealing from my shed and were charged accordingly. My family supported me in taking action against my sister and her family. My nephews were sentenced to community service, and I replaced the lock on my shed with a stronger one. My sister and her husband eventually paid me back, and my nephews are now facing the consequences of their actions. I installed more cameras for added security. Despite the legal actions, my eldest nephew attempted revenge by vandalizing my property, leading to his arrest and a mental health evaluation. He was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and received treatment. My younger nephews apologized and distanced themselves from their brother's actions. The family dynamics shifted, and my sister and her husband faced consequences for their lack of parenting. The situation has been resolved, and my nephews are now on the right path, learning from their mistakes. Backdoor, I imagine in total with the lawsuit I'd previously filed and replacing both the door and window cost them over $1,000. Doors and windows are not cheap. Meanwhile, my youngest nephew had his birthday a month after that and got a new mountain bike among his gifts. This really upset my eldest nephew, and he slashed the tires on the bike with a kitchen knife, which landed him in even more trouble. I know a thing or two about fixing bikes, so I went out and bought new tubes and tires for the bike and put them on it. So the bike is fine, and my nephew thanked me a lot for fixing it. My eldest nephew resorted to trying to run away because he wasn't being enabled anymore. He just walked out, got on his bike with a backpack full of stuff, and rode off. His parents quickly reported him missing because he left a goodbye letter that basically blamed me and his bipolar for all his problems. In the letter, he stated that he can't wait till he's 18 to get away from us all, so he was doing us a favor by getting rid of himself sooner. But he came back 3 days later without his bike or backpack and looking beat up. He wouldn't tell anyone what happened. We still don't know. But he was chewed out for continuously using me as a scapegoat for his personal issues because blaming me was the first thing he did after he got back. I didn't make him steal from me. I didn't make him attack my house. I didn't make him run away. That was all him. And he nearly ended up back in juvie for running off because he violated his probation. But he got off easy somehow. Currently, he spends his days pretty much in his room when not in school or doing chores or going to counseling. He finished his community service, but his probation will last till he's 18. He got some lenience for being diagnosed as bipolar, but it couldn't get him off the hook. And believe me, he tried many times. Once they told him what was wrong with him, it became his excuse for everything. But plenty of people go their whole lives with that same mental condition and never do the kinds of things he did. I've been mending things with my 2 younger nephews, but I don't want to be around the eldest at all, and the feeling is clearly mutual on his part. I've only seen him once in person the past few months, and he glared at me with more hate than I've ever seen from anyone before, stomping away. He can't paint me as the villain anymore without being called out on it, so there isn't much he can do other than just try and get through this. For the most part, he's totally shut down since school started. I'm told he barely speaks even at school. My other nephews tell me he's getting laughed at and ostracized, which I don't think is going to help him get better. My sister and Bill are also not on the best terms with me right now as well, but they can't exactly put any blame on me either. They know it was all on them and their bad parents. I've basically forced them to be more active in their kids' lives, which they should have been doing already. They complain a lot of being tired from work and keeping an eye on their kids. So whenever we talk as of late, it's always awkward and forced. They don't come to my house or me to theirs, but we do see each other at my parents' house, and our mother demands we be civil there, which I have no problem with. My 2 younger nephews have regained most of their privileges. They got their TV and video games back. But my eldest nephew isn't allowed on them at all. I'm told he's got some electronic entertainment in his room, but what kind I don't know. I just know he spends most of his time in there unless he has to be somewhere else. My eldest nephew is also not welcome pretty much anywhere in the family anymore. I've recently heard from my parents that they don't even want to see him on Thanksgiving or Christmas Eve this year because they are sick of his behavior and petty thievery. I guess I can understand that, but even I feel it's a bit harsh. My sister and Bill do as well because they are threatening to boycott if he can't come to either holiday. I can't stand that kid and would not want him in my house either, so I can understand why they've made the decision, but I don't think excluding him from everything and everyone is going to make him better. It's going to take a long time for my eldest nephew to mend bridges, if they can even be mended at all. The way things stand, he may try running off again once he's of age, unless the last time scared him too much to try it again. But hopefully things will get better for him in time if it's not too late to fix his behavior. I may not like him, but he's still my nephew, and I care. But I'm kind of powerless to do anything, so for now, the most I can do is just keep my nose out of it and offer support where I can. Update: I was hoping to have a better update for everyone after the holidays, but things didn't really get better. They started to, and then went downhill again. It took some time, but everything is more or less okay now. I didn't post earlier because I thought it better to wait. I wrote most of this months ago, but decided I'd wait a little longer to see if the situation would improve. But then I waited too long and just played for God until recently. So here's hopefully the final update of the devil snake who tempted his nephews with a shed full of cans. I'd do a recap, but there's just too damn much for that. So if you want to know the rest, you'll have to go back and read it. To start this post off, last year my sister and Bill went to Thanksgiving at Bill's parents' house instead of with my parents. My eldest nephew wasn't exactly on his best behavior over there either, but he didn't cause any trouble at least. That's what they told everyone. My sister and Bill also had a long talk with our parents about how excluding my nephew would not help his mental state at the moment. And I also back them on this because with the way things were going, all my nephew would feel is hate. So my parents relented and let him come to Christmas Eve. I, of course, got him a gift. But because I wanted to help him mentally get better, in early December, I went out and bought him a used metallic green mountain bike at the local secondhand store. It needed a little bit of work, but was an excellent buy for $30. I also learned that since his good backpack was stolen, he was using an old one that belonged to one of his brothers. So I grabbed a used one at the same secondhand store for about $5. I fixed up the bike and washed the backpack, and when I presented them both to him on a Sunday, he seemed completely shocked I'd give him anything. And it also made him really awkward, but he took them both with a look that said thanks and started using them right away to go to and from school like he did with his old bike and backpack. My sister and Bill were also pretty damn shocked I gave him gifts, let alone replace the stuff that was stolen from him when he ran away after he attacked my house with hammers. But the gifts had the effect I was hoping for. I was no longer the object of his rage. He really had been looking for any excuse to make me out to be the vile snake that ruined his life. But I'm not. When I next saw him, it was at the family Christmas Eve party, and while there, my sister and Bill made him apologize for putting all his anger on me. They loomed over him like shadows while he talked to me. He was told to look me in the eye repeatedly, and in his apology, he admitted that it wasn't my fault he was arrested. He egged me on, he stole from me, and he damaged my property, and he won't do it again. We shook hands, and he didn't make any trouble at the party at all. But his parents were like his shadows that entire evening. They didn't leave him alone at all. They might as well have had him on a leash. It was awkward, but I can understand why they'd put a lot on the line just so he could be allowed to come to Christmas. At New Year's, though, things took a dive. My eldest nephew stole a bottle of champagne from his parents and drank it all fast while locked in the bathroom before anyone could stop him. He'd asked for a drink of it prior and was told he was too young, so he stole one of the bottles and chugged it. We didn't know this until then, but apparently he'd been stealing alcohol for some time before his first arrest, and he kept a hidden stash somewhere that slowly ran out as he only touched it little by little and even sold some of it to other kids in the neighborhood. He didn't get in massive trouble, just got sent to his room for the night after he said he stole the booze because he was just really craving it and it was New Year's. His brothers admitted to their parents about his stash and showed them where it was hidden. It was a plastic tub in the crawl space under the house. When confronted about how they got all the alcohol, my two younger nephews admitted to following their brother's lead and only stole one beer at a time or poured some hard alcohol from its original bottle into another bottle little by little. And then the biggest bomb. They had been sneaking into other people's houses and doing the same thing all over the neighborhood. Their way of breaking in was to look for unlocked doors and windows. No houses with dogs because they'd bark, and the youngest would crawl in through windows because he was the smallest, and then he'd unlock the doors to let his brothers in. They made sure not to steal anything big from inside the houses so they could come back multiple times. But after they got arrested last year, they realized they didn't enjoy being thieves anymore and were just following their brother's lead like they'd said before. Of course, the kids were in trouble for not admitting any of that until then, and despite trying to keep it secret, it still got around somehow. It confirmed some of the suspicions of the neighbors considering how good my nephews were at being cat burglars. You'd think they have been more mindful of cameras, or perhaps they just figured old Uncle Yam would never get cameras. But after my nephews were exposed as thieves, a few of my and my sister's neighbors got cameras too. The punishment for admitting how they stole stuff was minor for my nephews. It was kind of redundant for the eldest because he's still in trouble with being on probation and whatnot, and he hadn't tried to steal anything else until he took the bottle of champagne. My Bill started giving him lots of mint gum to chew to help with his cravings because it was what he used to help cut back on drinking himself, and it kind of helped. Bill also started keeping all his booze locked in a padlocked fridge in the garage. He suspected his son tried to get into it once. All of that aside, things didn't seem so bad until my eldest nephew got in a fight at school in February. I'm told he didn't start it, but another kid picked on him until they started swinging fists. He got his two front teeth knocked out by the bully when he got his face slammed into a locker. There ended up being a reason why for this attack. My younger nephews told me their older brother had a number of targets to pick on at school before getting arrested. He was apparently the typical bully people picture when they think of one. He stole things from other kids, aimed for the small and the weak, smacked them around when no one was looking, and on more than one occasion used a small knife to stab bike tires. Well, the big brother of a kid he previously picked on went after him, and that boy messed him up. Both of his top front teeth were knocked out, and his nose was broken. He had to be taken to the hospital, and an emergency oral surgeon had to put his teeth back in, which also required special braces to hold them in place. His nose also had to be reset, and he was put in a neck brace. The poor boy didn't want to be seen by anyone for months. No one pressed charges, believe me, I've asked many times as to why not, but the other kid's parents paid at least half of the cost for my nephew's treatments for his teeth and nose through their insurance. That's what they told me anyway. My sister and Bill's health insurance sucked for covering the rest, though, and they had a high copay. They didn't bother to file anything because they didn't want to be in court again, and the other parents only paid as much as they did because they didn't want to be sued. I contributed a bit to the cost too. I still had the $500 they gave me in cash after I sued them and decided to give it back to them to help ease the cost a little. They won't tell me how much it cost to get my nephew's nose fixed and two front teeth put back in, but after that, I think they may have had no savings left. When I saw my nephew after the incident, his face was messed up, and his front teeth were wired in place. He refused to return to school and did all his remaining lessons online with a school-provided laptop. The boy who beat him up, I was told, received nothing more than a 2E suspension. I won't deny I was upset, but at the same time, I know this only happened because my nephew was a bully to other kids. What goes around does still eventually come around. We're in summer now, and my eldest nephew is still a shut-in most of the time. He'll go out bike riding alone for an hour or two, but other than that, he generally keeps to himself in his room. There have been talks from my sister and Bill of moving closer to his parents after their son's probation is up, and I don't blame them. Practically the whole neighborhood hates them now, so they want out as soon as they can afford it, which unfortunately may take another year or so to pull off. I have been spending more time with my 2 younger nephews, and they are doing a lot better now. They're more respectful and have been allowed back in my home. Nothing has gone missing, and I enjoy spending time with them, watching movies and playing games. They've become good kids again, and they're trying to make up for their mistakes. On the rare occasion I see my eldest nephew, he is not cold to me anymore. He even brought his bike to me for repairs once, but he's a boy of few words now, almost stoically silent these days. I do know that when he's 18, he wants to be far away from here. We've suggested trade school, and he's not against the idea. Beyond that, I've been doing my best not to overstep as an uncle. So that's it. After all this time, I may have nothing more to write here.